What if the root of your anxiety isn't out there, but in here, in the quiet, exhausting effort to be liked by everyone? Since childhood, we're trained, sometimes gently, sometimes forcefully, to seek approval. We learn early on that being accepted means being safe. A smile from a teacher, a nod from a parent, applause from a crowd. And so we shape ourselves, bit by bit, hiding what feels too strange, dimming what feels too bright. Carl Jung, one of the fathers of depth psychology, believed that what we fail to make conscious ends up controlling us from the shadows. And often, this control shows up as a deep, hidden dependency on the validation of others. We mistake approval for love, conformity for belonging, and in the process, we lose ourselves. How many times have you silenced your truth just to avoid being judged? How many times have you said yes when your soul was screaming no? Living like this feels safe until it doesn't. Because one day, you wake up and realize you're not living your life, you're performing it. In this video, we'll explore what truly happens when you stop living for the gaze of others. You'll understand why letting go of the need for approval is not selfish, it's sacred. We'll walk through Jungian concepts like the persona, shadow, and the path to individuation to guide this journey inward. And by the end, you might just begin to feel something you haven't felt in a long time: freedom. Not the kind that comes from rebellion, but the kind that comes from authenticity. Are you ready to take that step? From the moment we're born, we're given one unwritten rule. To belong, you must be accepted. Approval becomes the currency of our existence, and it starts with the small, seemingly innocent things. A pat on the back, a smile from a parent, the grades we get in school. Slowly, these external validations shape who we are, or rather, who we think we need to be. But here's the thing, this is conditioning. And it's not just about following rules, it's about learning to wear masks. Jung called this the persona, the image we present to the world, shaped by external expectations. The persona is not necessarily fake, but it's a version of us that serves to fit in. The challenge arises when we mistake the persona for the entirety of our being. As children, we don't always have the tools to distinguish between who we are and who we are expected to be. Over time, this can turn into a habit, a silent negotiation with the world around us. We become what others want us to be in order to feel loved, accepted, and safe. But in doing so, we bury parts of ourselves, the messy, the vulnerable, the true. Here's the question. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself if the decisions you make, the way you dress, the things you say, the choices you make, are truly yours? Or are they reflections of what others expect from you? Every time we try to fit into a box someone else has created, we're distancing ourselves from our authentic nature. This leaves us emotionally drained, constantly seeking the next dose of validation. When was the last time you made a decision purely based on what you wanted, not what you thought you should want? There's a subtle pain that comes from living a life that isn't truly yours. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, like a slow leak of your energy, your joy, your sense of direction. You smile when you want to scream. You agree when every fiber in your body says no. You stay silent when your truth is begging to be heard. Over time, this pattern becomes more than just a habit. It becomes your identity. But here's the danger. When we live for the approval of others, we betray ourselves. We lose touch with our needs, our desires, even our values. And that kind of disconnection has a cost. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When we don't acknowledge our suppressed desires or our fear of judgment, those parts of us don't just disappear, they slip into the unconscious and begin to shape our lives in ways we can't see. That anxiety you can't explain? The burnout that doesn't go away, even with rest? The sense of emptiness despite doing everything right? These are symptoms of a life lived under silent pressure, a life out of alignment. Living for others may earn us applause, but applause fades. And when the lights go down, we're left with a haunting question. Who am I when no one's watching? Take a breath. Let that question sink in. Because recognizing this invisible cost is the first step toward reclaiming your inner authority and finally beginning to live for yourself, not through others. So what happens when you finally stop living for others? Not in anger, not in rebellion, but in quiet truth, when you simply decide, I am enough as I am. This isn't about becoming indifferent or cold. It's about no longer being enslaved by the opinions of those who don't live your life, feel your emotions, or carry your history. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the path of becoming who you truly are, beyond the mask, beyond the roles, beyond the expectations. It's not an easy path. It asks for honesty. It demands the courage to stand alone, but it leads to something sacred, freedom. When you stop caring what others think, not because you're arrogant, but because you've made peace with who you are, a strange thing begins to happen. Things start falling into place. You speak more clearly, decide more boldly, love more deeply, and life responds to that authenticity. A woman once shared how she gave up a high-paying job that drained her soul. Everyone thought she was crazy, but deep down, she knew she was done pretending. Within a year, she had started her own practice, working fewer hours, making enough, and, for the first time, feeling alive. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving space. Ask yourself, what would I choose if no one ever judged me again? Because when you stop chasing approval, you start attracting alignment. And that is the beginning of a life that fits. Not perfectly, not neatly, but truthfully. And that's where real peace begins. There's a quiet power that comes from living in alignment with your truth, not chasing applause, not avoiding judgment, just being. When you begin living authentically, life doesn't magically become easier, but it becomes lighter, because you're no longer carrying the weight of pretending. Jung believed that the process of individuation, of integrating all parts of the self, is the real path to wholeness. This means embracing not just the socially acceptable parts of us, but also the shadow, the parts we hide, suppress, or deny, the ones we fear others won't accept. But here's the paradox. When you accept all of who you are, you stop needing that acceptance from the world. Your inner approval becomes enough. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It starts with small choices. Saying no when you mean it, and letting that be okay. Noticing when you're performing, and gently stepping back into presence. Keeping a journal, not to impress, but to confess. Practicing the art of not reacting, especially when someone disapproves. And maybe, most importantly, asking yourself each morning, what would it look like to live more honestly today? Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That privilege is yours, not tomorrow, not when others approve, but now. You don't need permission to be real. You just need practice. And with each moment of honesty, you take a step closer to the freedom you've been craving all along, not the freedom to escape the world, but to belong fully to yourself within it. You were never meant to be everyone's version of enough. You were meant to be you, fully, courageously, and without apology. Throughout this journey, we've peeled back the layers, the conditioning, the fear of judgment, the masks we wear. We've seen how the quiet need for approval can shape our lives without us even realizing it, until we feel like strangers to ourselves. But here's the truth. Every moment you choose authenticity over approval, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Carl Jung knew this well. He didn't promise comfort, he promised meaning. And perhaps the deepest meaning of all is found in this simple act, living your own life. Because when you stop needing others to tell you who you are, you finally start to hear your own voice again. That voice may be shaky at first, but it's yours, and it will grow stronger with every step. So here's what I invite you to carry with you. You are allowed to be misunderstood. You are allowed to be different. You are allowed to grow beyond what others expect. And above all, you are allowed to choose yourself again and again. If this message stirred something in you, share it with someone who's also tired of performing. Let this be a quiet revolution, not of rebellion, but of return, back to what matters, back to the center, back to you. And remember, you don't have to be perfect to be free. You just have to be real.